Bibliophiles, and welcome back to Blatantly Bookish. I'm Marissa, and I cannot believe that 2018 is over already. I will be posting videos about my December wrap-up as well as my favorite books of 2018 on my channel very soon. So stay tuned for those. But today I'd like to think about my 2018 reading as a whole and think about how I'd like to shape both my reading and my channel in the coming year. In 2018, I read 55 books, which is exactly 10 less books than I read in 2017. Still, I'm pleased with the amount that I read. It's nothing compared to some booktubers, but I'm not exactly the fastest reader. The way I read is really a few pages before bed each night, and then large spurts of reading on the weekends, if I don't have any plans. And there are times when I will finish a book or read a really interesting plot point in the middle of a book and let my thoughts simmer for a few days to a week before picking it up again or starting anything new. But that's just how I seem to work at the moment. It means I get less read, but the quality of my reading experience remains excellent. Anyway, I rewatched my 2018 goals video, and I don't really want to review too many things, but I'll address some aspects of that video here. I did a lot of mood reading this year, but for me that meant taking a lot out from the library and barely reading anything off my shelves. I did not make a considerable amount of videos on individual books like I said I wanted to, but I did manage to get through a few classics that I had been putting off for a while, namely Mansfield Park and Our Mutual Friend. In looking at the books I've read this past year, the breakdown of genre was really surprising. I played around with Sophie from Portal in the Pages spreadsheet this year, but I found it to be too cumbersome to maintain, and I gave that up in probably right after I started, and I don't even think that lasted a month and a half. I did, however, keep an organized list of the books that I read in 2018, broken down by month, and I ran some broad statistics on my yearly reading comparing 2017 to 2018. So here's a breakdown of genre and gender of author. I know that I read more female authors than male authors in general. There's no conscious effort, it's just simply what I'm drawn to. And ever since BookTube, I've been reading more contemporary works than classics and Victorian literature. I'd like to make an effort to read more Victorian literature this year because I miss it desperately. Victorian works and classics generally take me longer to read, but who cares? If my total number of books goes down next year, but I read a lot of big books, that'll be something to discuss in next year's end-of-year wrap-up video. I was actually quite surprised by how many nonfiction books I read this year, and more specifically essay collections. 4 essay collections seems like quite a lot when you consider that that's also the amount of Victorian literature that I read. I read less poetry this year than in 2017, which is interesting. This genre breakdown is really just for fun. There isn't anything I really want to change besides maybe evening out my contemporary and classic fiction numbers a bit more. This year I have some more specific goals. I think that the past year I let my reading get too unstructured, so we shall see how imposing a tiny bit more structure works for me this year. Last year only 8 out of the 55 books came from my shelves, and that is pathetic. That's not even a book off my shelves a month. And I definitely acquired more than 8 books this year. My shelves are a bit chaotic at this point and full of unread books. One reason that I don't read much off my shelves is that I absolutely adore libraries. There is nothing more relaxing for me than being in the presence of so many books, walking up and down the aisles and browsing through them all. And the libraries by me are fantastic. They're full of so many popular authors and new releases. I really just can't help myself. They are such a treat. I've even already in the new year gone to the library and picked up The Mermaid and Mrs. Hancock, which I've been dying to read ever since I heard about it. So I'm really excited to get to this one. And even though I do want to read more books off of my shelves, I don't want that to come at the expense of my frequent library trips. The main reason that I don't read much off of my shelves, though, is that they overwhelm me. I stare at my shelves for hours debating which book I should read next. They are specially curated with the books I want to read the most, or that I think I will enjoy so much that I'd like to own them. It's hard to pick just one book to read next when you're in the mood to read half of the books on any shelf at any given time. So enter the TBR jar. There is a reason that these are so popular on BookTube. I am like a little child in a candy store when it comes to books on my shelves, and one strategy for dealing with kids in a candy store is to narrow down their choices. Would you like gummy bears or would you like jelly beans? Having only 2 choices to pick from makes things so much easier and quicker. So once a month, I'd like to pick 2 slips of paper from this jar and read only one of those books. There are about 150 slips of paper in this jar, and I've set up all of the standard guidelines for selecting books. You know, if you pick up the third book in a series and you haven't read the first one, obviously you should read the first one before you read the third one. And if for whatever reason I've already read the book and have forgotten to remove the slip, obviously I'll just pick a new slip of paper. The TBR jar is simple, and hopefully it will take the anxiety out of the dreaded question, what should I read next? This year, I would also like to plan ahead and stay organized with both my reading and booktube, as well as life in general. My friend and I are going to make bullet journals together this year. I've tried to make bullet journals in the past before, and I failed miserably to keep them going throughout the year. I always find something in their structure that's lacking. I've spent the past month examining what might work better for me, and I've decided that in order to make it work, I need to somehow combine the planner and a sketchbook by having both ruled and blank pages. I ordered my journal online, and it should arrive on January 4th. So we'll see how that works for me this year. Please let me know if you'd like to see a video or a series of videos about my experience journaling. I feel like there are already plenty of bullet journals out there on various YouTube channels, but if it works out for me this time and there's a lot of interest, perhaps I will incorporate it into my channel in some way. Please let me know what you think about that. Then I have some more specific reading goals this year. I'd like to read more Victorian literature, as I've already mentioned. So related to Victorian literature, I'd like to finish the Barsetshire Chronicles series by Anthony Trollope. I have the last three, Framley, Parsonage, The Small House at Allington, and the last Chronicle of Barset left to read, and they're all sitting on my shelves behind me somewhere, ready to go. I'd also like to continue my journey with Hardy and Gaskell. I have the two main novels of Elizabeth Gaskell's yet to read on my shelves. Those would be Ruth and Sylvia's Lovers, and I have some Hardys on my shelves as well, if I'm not too put off by Tess of the D'Urbervilles, which I have yet to finish. Different topic entirely. Let's see, I have the Woodlanders by Thomas Hardy, Under the Greenwood Tree, The Mayor of Casterbridge, and The Return of the Native, all by Thomas Hardy on my shelves. I would also like to read The Professor by Charlotte Bronte, which I assume I can easily find on ebook, and I'd like to reread a Bronte novel this year because it's been a while. I'm thinking perhaps Villette. Those are all of my Victorian-related thoughts. I would also like to do Jane Austen July again this year, though I haven't talked this over with Katie yet. I'd like to read her unfinished novels, The Watsons and Sanditon. Also this past year, I discovered Ursula K. LeGuin through her essay collection No Time to Spare, and I'd like to explore her fiction a little bit. I have Left Hand of Darkness on my shelf, so that seems like a good book to read this year. I'd also like to read a Kurt Vonnegut book this year. I read Slaughterhouse-Five, God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater, and Cat's Cradle 2 years ago, I think, and I got along with his satirical style of writing so well. Last year, I didn't read a thing by him, so this year I'd like to fix that. I have Bluebeard and Breakfast of Champions on my shelves, so I'll probably read one or both of those in 2019. And last but not least, in 2019, I'd like to do some more buddy reads. Some of my best reading experiences since starting this channel have been buddy reading and discussing books with others. I probably would have enjoyed those books anyway, but reading along with a friend certainly enhances the reading experience for me and introduces me to new perceptions of the text. So, if any of the specific books that I've mentioned in this video sound like something you might like to read or reread with me, please let me know in the comments and perhaps we can arrange a time to read them together. Those are my lofty goals for the new year. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below about anything I've said. Please let me know if there's a specific book you'd like to buddy read with me. Was there anything that surprised you about your reading this past year? What are your goals for 2019? Happy New Year, and as always, I look forward to seeing you in another video soon. Bye!